All right, this is Women in Nationalism, Take 3. VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com. This time I'm just going to continue even if the feedback cuts out. So this time I went and checked Twitter, and I was informed that you guys can see me even if I can't see any feedback from you, so that's fine. It's kind of funny because I find the comments annoying, but when they cut out like they just did now, it's a little bit distracting because I'm used to it now. Anyhow, what I want to talk about is something I addressed last night. And, you know, I specifically mentioned a number of people on the alt-right and alt-light, specifically women. I think I mentioned Tara McCarthy, Brittany Pettibone, Lauren Southern, Tommy Lauren, among others. And some people obviously misunderstood what I was talking about. Okay? I am not criticizing these women. I am not saying that there is no place in the alt-right or the alt-light for them. I am not insisting that you know, it's a boys-only club. I am not saying that only men have anything to contribute in this regard. You know, I mean, the irony of it is I probably retweet Tara McCarthy more than anybody except for Space Bunny, both on Twitter and Gab. Why? Because she's doing some of the best social media work out there. Not just of the alt-right women. I mean, she's doing some of the best out there of anybody, including myself. You know, so this is not criticism of individuals in the slightest. In fact, I wasn't even addressing women specifically. I was just using them as an example of a phenomenon that we see, particularly on the right, in which white men, conservative white men, who make up the greater body of the conservative movement, of the alt-right, of all these things, have a tendency, white men have a tendency, when they are the dominant or exclusive population, they have a tendency to get overly excited about welcoming outsiders into their spaces. Okay? I mean, you can actually look at this as a microcosm of the larger problem of white nations doing the same, if you think about it. And this phenomenon holds true in a fractal sense. We see the same thing in a group of gamers. You know, you see the same thing in guys who get together to watch football. You see the same thing over and over and over again. And basically, guys get very, very excited when they find women who express some interest in their interests or sympathy with their values. And now those are good things. It's a good thing. But what you need to understand is that boys are not girls. White men are not black men, are not yellow men, are not red men, and so forth. And so whenever you bring in someone from a different identity into your identity group, it changes the dynamic, and it changes the way that the group operates. This also operates in reverse. I've lived in Japan. You know, I was the only American in a particular Japanese social circle. And it did definitely screw up the way that social group happened to operate. You know, this is normal. This is how it works. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't want to necessarily allow that sort of thing. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. It's generally going to happen. But what you can do is you can pay attention to what's happening, and you can be aware of what's happening, and you can also be wary of getting overly excited about these things, okay? Why? I'll give you an example. Tomi Lahren. You know, the right was super excited about this attractive blonde woman, young, personable, seemed pretty smart. And so what do? You know, they immediately rush her up the media ladder. You know, The Blaze hires her. They're putting her on TV. You know, they're sticking her in front of as many cameras as they can. She's building up this big following and that sort of thing. What's the first thing she does when she leaves The Blaze? She goes and announces that she's pro-choice. And this upset a lot, understandably, this upset a lot of the conservatives that were in her fan base. They never had any idea. Is that her fault? Did she hide that from intentionally? No. Nobody ever bothered to find out. She hadn't been around enough for anyone to know. You know, there's absolutely no vetting if you have a sufficiently pretty face. Okay? Now, there's another aspect to this, and this is something that I pointed out, you know, Tara McCarthy and I were exchanging some tweets today. And this is something that I was pointing out to her. This is not, the phenomenon that I'm talking about is not only a problem for the men. It's not only a problem for the group. It is also a problem for the woman who gets, you know, embraced and elevated very rapidly. Why? Look at what happened to Milo. You know, if you notice, you know, people like Mike Cernovich, people like Stefan Molyneux, people like me, we take shots all the time, right? I mean, we get accused of everything all the time. It doesn't bother us. It doesn't faze us. We not only are not surprised by it, we expect it. We can see it coming. We know how to handle it when it hits, and we carry on. Okay? There's several reasons for that. Number one, part of it is personal. Part of it is that, you know, like I said, you get accustomed to it. But part of it is also structural. You build up, over time, a base of people that you trust, a base of people that have your back, a base of people that provide you with strong emotional support. You know, when I was kicked out of the SFWA, it was actually a fake. It was actually a charade, but you know, but when I was targeted by the SJWs in science fiction, when I became, in the words of the Wall Street Journal, the most despised man in science fiction, it didn't throw me, it didn't shake me, and we actually came back and absolutely rocked their foundations by going and taking away their awards for 2 years. Why? Because I had been around for a long time. You know, I was a nationally syndicated columnist. I had this blog. You know, we have the Dread Ilk. We have the Vile Faceless Minions. We have this very strong and very reliable infrastructure, so that, you know, when the heat comes, when the pressure comes, when the focused criticism comes, we're ready for it, and we're not only ready for it, we are able to very effectively hit back. If you notice, I don't even get attacked that much by the left anymore. Why? because they're afraid to. They know, it is a well-established fact that if you come after me, we're coming after you. No doubt, no question. But if you are, here's the problem, is that if you are someone who is elevated rapidly, who is basically picked out, this is particularly true if you're picked out by a big organization. If you're picked out by Breitbart, if you're picked out by Fox News, if you're picked out by whoever, and you're picked out by the Blaze, and you're elevated rapidly because you are useful to them, because you have a pretty face, because you belong to a identity group that they want to appeal to. There's a number of reasons, But here's the thing: if that happens to you, no matter how big your following looks like, you are actually in a very fragile position. Why? Because as quickly and easily as it is given to you, it can be taken away. And it will be taken away. That's what happened to Milo. I talked to him at the time that whole thing was happening, after the Bill Maher show. Cernovich talked to him. He was not ready for it. He did not see it coming the way that we did, because he did not have the experience. And when it did hit him, and when they did take away, his platform at Breitbart and so forth, and when he did lose his book contract at Simon & Schuster, and that sort of thing, it was very difficult for him. Of course it was very difficult for him. That sort of thing is very difficult the first time you experience it. It's just like in martial arts. The first time you get punched in the face, you go into shock. You literally, forget who you are, what you're doing. You cannot believe it happened. The 5th time, the 10th time, you don't even notice it. These days, if somebody's accusing me of X, Y, or Z, I don't even bother to respond anymore. What are they going to call me that they haven't already called me? So that's the problem that these young women who are being rapidly elevated by virtue of the fact that they are unusual. It's not just, you have to understand, it's not just because you're saying good stuff. It's not just because you're smart. It's not just because, you're on the side of the angels. It's because, and also in fairness, it's not correct to say, oh, it's just because you're pretty and everybody wants to get in your pants. That's not true either. Probably, because, like I said, we see the same thing all the time with blacks and Republicans. Republicans get super excited anytime there's a conservative black. They get overly excited. Usually, in the case of a sufficiently attractive woman, conservative woman, she rises rapidly up the pundit ranks. If you're black, there's a very good chance they'll make you run for president. They're a little bit more rare, I guess. I haven't quite figured out the rules of how it all works. Obviously, people are not sufficiently interested in American Indians, or I would be the next American Indian candidate for president. I jest. But the point that I'm trying to make is that this phenomenon is something that is always going to happen. It exists for the same reason that when you turn on the network news, half the time, you've got some gray-haired guy with gravitas, and executive hair, sitting next to a attractive young woman who's half his age. Okay? Now, she might be excellent. But she's not there for the same reason that he is. And you have to understand that. And you have to understand that the situation is different. And so, and there are risks for both the movement and there are risks for the individual involved. And pretending that this is not the case is foolish. All right? And again, this is not an attack on anyone. I absolutely support what all of those women, with the exception of Tomi Lahren, are doing. And frankly, I don't really know much about Tomi. I've never paid any attention to her. I honestly don't pay I don't pay much attention to flash in the pans of any type. You know, I like to wait and see who is going to do something substantive, who is going to do something meaningful, you know. Because you've got women like Ann Coulter, who is a serious person, you know. Yes, she may have, you know, made it big during the whole Clinton thing, the whole Lewinsky thing, when she was on Fox all the time. Now let's face it, you know, she was on Fox because she was smart, she had long blonde hair, but she proved herself to be a very substantive individual, you know. And you could argue, I think, effectively, that she has probably been the most important conservative commentator of the last 10 to 12 years. So, you know, it's ludicrous to claim that there is no important place for women like this, especially because if the alt-right is going to win, these women are absolutely vital. Because we need the women to join us. And they will. Why? Because women tend to respond well to to policies that are related to security and that are related to safety. Basically, fear is the primary female motivator in politics. And there is nothing that is probably smarter to be afraid of right now than multiculturalism and mass immigration. So the alt-right has an argument that will be extremely effective for women, but it needs women to lead the charge in making those arguments and in talking about those things. And like I said, that's why I'm always retweeting Tara McCarthy. She does a better job of anyone, male or female, hammering those security issues, hammering those issues related to safety and fear. And so, you know, it's just, you know, I understand that there are some guys that resent this, and that's understandable. I mean, I don't resent it because I don't want a career in media. I don't resent it because I don't care, you know, if I have 3,000 followers on Twitter or 300,000 followers on Twitter. You know, it makes literally no difference to me and my life in any way, shape, or form. And so, I mean, you know, Cernovich and a couple of the other guys had to, you know, practically twist my arm to get me to embrace this video medium. I don't like this medium. You know, I don't like the fact that I say something and then it gets misinterpreted and misheard. And, you know, I mean, I vastly prefer it when I write something. You know, you want to see what I wrote in 2001? It's right here. There's no ambiguity. It's here, you read it, you know exactly what I said, you know exactly what I think. We don't have to discuss it again. In this medium, we do. Fine, I accept that I'm a dinosaur. I accept that it is necessary to use this medium. I'm willing to do that, but it is inefficient. And if the fact that younger folks, younger prettier folks, younger smarter folks, younger cooler folks who happen to use it much more effectively, great. That's fantastic. Not everybody feels that way. And so I think you have to cut some slack for the guys who work really hard, do everything that they can, and then they find themselves basically left in the dust because, somebody with a pretty face who's saying much the same stuff becomes much more popular. It's only human to have a degree of envy there. But here's the thing. It's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. You can't get upset when it does, because this is the way of the world. For whatever reason, both men and women like to tune in and listen to, a smart, pretty face telling them the things that they want or need to hear. Okay? There is a reason why, people tell me all the time, you should really get Space Bunny to, show up on your periscopes. People would love to tune in and see that. I'm sure they would. As I said in my previous Periscope, we used to joke about using her picture. Basically, we're going to make up a name like Brianna Sky and put her picture up and just put my columns up under that picture and see how long it took Fox to offer her a job. That's the way the world works. And so we have two choices in the alt-right. We can try to fight reality, which is, number one, abjectly stupid, number two, doomed to failure, and number three, a complete violation of the alt-right as defined by the 16 points. We are supposed to be the movement that accepts reality. We are supposed to be the political philosophy that deals with the harsh realities, the harsh. Basically, we accept and deal with reality as we find it. Well, guess what? That's reality as we find it. Okay? And so we should be grateful that we already have women like Wife with a Purpose, and that we already have women like Tara and Brittany and some of the others. Okay? Now, can we hopefully help them become more effective? I hope so. Here's another area that this is a problem with women. Number one, they don't necessarily know how to build infrastructure. Okay, there's a reason why women tend to come into male spaces and invade them and take them over rather than just build up their own. They generally, I won't go so far as to say they can't, but regardless, they generally don't. Okay, so, but knowing this, what we can do is we can help them do it. We can assist them in doing it and becoming more effective. All right? There's a reason, like Ann Coulter, just to give you an example, she's fantastic, but she has not been successful in any way, shape, or form in building a larger movement around her, in building up people around her. Okay? She could have, for example, she could have helped me back when I was the only other young right-wing columnist who, like her, was syndicated by Universal Press Syndicate. She did nothing. She never even contacted me, much less, pushed me on to the editorial pages. All right? I'm not criticizing her. I'm simply pointing out that, Anne has never, ever capitalized on her personal fame to help build up other people. Very much unlike Cernovich and unlike Molyneux, who consistently try to build up other people. Now, I'll point out that we're already seeing more effective behavior from some of the younger women, like Brittany and Tara, who are, on their Virtue of the West show, are often bringing people on, introducing them to other people. I understand that sometimes that's what you do to build up your own presence too. But the point is that if you start that way, you're probably going to continue that way. And that's a good thing. One of the most important things that the right has to understand is that always trying to capitalize on yourself and maximize yourself is not harmful. You are missing opportunities to help build up the movement and to build up your own influence. Okay? I could. When we first started Castalia House, that was really just supposed to be a vehicle for me to publish my books. But I realized very quickly that it was an opportunity to help build up, what we call blue science fiction, or help build up like-minded authors who didn't fit into the pink science fiction, queer, gendered, SJW-infested nonsense that the mainstream publishers were publishing. And now, we're seeing this whole ecosystem develop between Castalia House, some of the big indie writers. If you look on my shelf, B.B. Taylor, David Van Dyke, maybe eventually we'll start, not maybe, we are going to be working with other big indie authors. They help us, we help them, everybody benefits. And this is something that, we can learn, both the men and the women can learn from people like Mike Cernovich, also people like Alex Jones. What has Alex Jones done? Alex Jones has helped build up Paul Joseph Watson. Now he's working with Mike Cernovich. That's great. That's exactly the way things should work. The way things can't work is the way it works with Breitbart, where people get anointed, they get elevated very quickly, and then the minute that they cross the line, like Katie McHugh, they get the rug pulled out from under them. And that's something that those of you who are young and in a position to potentially be elevated by others need to keep in mind. And that's why you always need to be working with other people, because it makes you anti-fragile. I'll recommend a book right now. If you haven't read it, if there's one nonfiction book that you should read, if you're at all alt-right sympathetic, it is Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. It's absolutely brilliant. Everything he writes is brilliant, but this is more than brilliant. It's important. So, anyhow, I hope this sets the record straight. I wanted to make it very, very clear that I support the women of the alt-right wholeheartedly. I hope to pass on whatever benefits of my additional decades of experience that I have, and I want them to be extremely successful in bringing in other women into the movement in a way that does not adulterate its ideals. And that's the key thing. That's the key thing, because whenever you're bringing anyone into a movement, or even into a state like Vermont or Colorado or whatever, anytime you're bringing in people, you run the risk of significantly changing what is there. And so that's something that all of us in the alt-right need to be wary of and focused on, which is the whole point of the alt-right is to preserve Western civilization and preserve the European nations. Now, I know some of you will disagree, I personally think that restoring Christianity is a vital aspect of those two things, but it's not the actual objective. The actual objective is preserving and restoring the primacy of Western civilization and preserving the European nations. We can disagree about the best way to do that, obviously, but those are the things that we cannot and will not compromise on. So as long as that is your goal, as long as those are two of your primary objectives, then we are brothers and sisters. And we need to support each other because, Jesus once said of Christians, you'll know you're my follower, they'll know you're my follower when the world hates you. Well, I can tell you right now, even if you don't believe in the supernatural, you don't believe in Jesus Christ, you don't believe in any of that stuff, I can tell you right now, the world hates you if you're of the alt-right. Why? Because you are in harmony with the truth. Maybe it's only the small t truth instead of the big T truth, but you are in harmony with it, and the world of lies hates you for it. Whether you are a man, whether you are a woman, they don't care. So that's why it is vital for the men of the alt-right to support wholeheartedly the women of the alt-right, not because they're pretty, not because they're popular, not because you're attracted to them or anything like that, but because they are absolutely vital to the survival of the West. So that's all I have. Again, if you're interested in Volume 2 of my collected columns, they're now out, and I'll look forward to seeing the inevitable comments, criticism, and so forth on Twitter and Gab. Have a good evening.